I have one more I want to tell all of you about because all of you know this man. And I would say, it was probably the oldest person that I ever mentored. I'm 73, and I have been doing it for a long time. And when I started, this man was in the restaurant business. He's one of the great restaurateurs. And we started out on a project to how to improve his restaurants. And his rendezvous point was the Palm Beach Polo Club, if you can imagine that kind of a place. Tiger Woods can't even get in there. But anyway, we would go to the Palm Beach Polo Club, and he also liked to go to the Biltmore Hotel in Arizona, and we would go there and talk about the dreams and the things and what he wanted to do, what unique factors in the restaurant industry. So we started using all these concepts I'm talking to you about, of all kinds of experiences, etc., and we went to work on a number of his restaurants. And then finally, we started working on what to be a Mexican format. We decided, let's see if we can apply all this to a Mexican format. And we began to develop a restaurant, which you all know as Chili's. We had been working on Steak and Ale, Bennigan's, and then we did Macaroni's Grill. And I know many of you have been there, and that, of course, is Norman Brinker. And Norman is, again, one of these rare people. Under my list of recommendations to you, I'd like to recommend the book that came out of our work. I was not a co-author of this book, but he talks about me in the book. And the name of the book is On the Brink. And it has a lot of mentoring concepts and stories in it. It's On the Brink from Brinker, and it's an autobiography of Norman Brinker. So those are some of the examples that I have had. And then I got to thinking about, of all of these people that I have known, had the luck to be able to be friends with, what has stood out more than any other, single one thing, and that causes you to fail or causes not to do as well as you'd like to do? And I've really given a lot of thought. Di and I work a lot on projects with people. And we're working right now with the Ferries on a project. And one of the things that you find whenever you all do it too, when you start a project, there'll be somebody who will say within 5 minutes it won't work. I don't know why that is. You can have 5 people, 50 people. Somebody will tell you it won't work, and they start complaining right away. Well, we decided if we were going to do successful work that we had to deal with the complainer. Is you can't let it go by. Because what most people do is let things go by. We base that, and this will be a major point, that one of the other things, if you want to think out of the box and be good at mentoring and coaching, and as a protege, you do not sanction incompetence. You do not sanction incompetence. And by that, I mean ignore it. That when something comes up that isn't right, to let it go. See, some people never go after anything. But what I'd like to suggest to you, when you see incompetence, go after it right away. And you won't have to look far. Because the only way we ever get things better is if people don't sanction the things that aren't right. And I was in a Holiday Inn, seeing that thing that happened this morning, and I put in a wake-up call at a Holiday Inn for 5:30, and the guy said, "Could you wake up later?" I'd had a long day that day, and I said, why do you want me to wake up later? He said, there are too many people waking up at 5:30. I said, when do you want me to wake up? Just absolutely pitiful. I said, when would you like me to wake up? He said, could you wake up at 6:45? We got an opening. You believe that? We got an opening at 6:45. I will not tell you what I said, but he was the night auditor, and had his shoestrings on down there. And I said, okay, fine. Do you know what they did? They called me at 5:30. I said, I'm not waking up. I tell you, it was the worst place I had ever been in. By the way, if you don't sanction incompetence, this major point, number one, you have to give people the right to fail. Because we all make mistakes and we have a right to fail with one exception. If their failure is going to hurt them or what you're doing irreparably, you take their right to fail away. By the way, that's also the one justification for being authoritarian. A justification for being authoritarian is when someone is going to do something that jeopardizes, and you not only sanction incompetence, you let it happen, or you stop it totally from happening because it might kill them. If a toddler's, trying to get out a window on the second story, you don't have a meeting to see what you're going to do about that toddler, or you'll have a squashed toddler. You stop the toddler from doing it. So the idea, I don't know how to say this quite. This would be another major point. I get in trouble every time I say this, but I love to take bubble baths. I have been talking about bubble baths for 30 years, and the nuns, they go for that. When I talk about them about the bubble bath thing, they have given me so many just unbelievable stuff, But I've been looking at all of you, and some of you I think would be really good. There's 2 or 3 people I've been looking at, I won't point you out and embarrass you, but that I think a bubble bath would be really great, You know who you are, I don't need to say it. But what I want to suggest that you do when you take a bubble bath, though, don't do like a accountant or banker. Accountant and banker, these types, you work with a lot of them. When they take a bubble bath, they count the damn bubbles. How many bubbles are there? Well, no, I'm saying, and if 4 bubbles get out, they get out and chase them, see where they win. Miss the whole esprit, from doing it. Pour in the whole bottle. You know what I'm saying? Pour in the entire bottle, let it flow out on the floor like old Esther Williams movies, and put candles around there, sink down in there, get your fortunes, have a hell of a time. Can't you see it? Call your wife, say, come in here, I want to show you something. Where have you been, Oh, brother, I was playing golf. Oh, yeah, right. But try that. The bubble bath, when you do it like that, is just so different than any other thing. And I got in the habit of doing, I try to take 2 a day. I don't do it every day because if you can't in the Holiday Inn, they got sandpaper strips. Well, I'm serious. They do. Now, wait a minute. You laugh at me, but some of you know what I'm talking about. They're that thick, looks like somebody beat up on you when you go up through them. Now, I know it sounds silly, but do you know how serious I am and how important it is to take bubble baths? Some of you are thinking, do you mean the Ferrys paid him whatever that big fee was that he did, and he's telling us to take bubble baths? Yeah. That's exactly right. Because I'm telling you something, you'll all thank me when you start doing it, and you'll say, that's the greatest thing that happened to my husband in years, is get him sunk in there under those bubbles. Okay, this was another major point. And when I first tell you this, you'll again wonder, but I want to recommend that you all read 300 books a year. That's about, it's not a book a day, but it's almost. Now people look at me and say, he's flipped, that guy. 300 books. I've been saying it for 30 years. I started talking when I was 15. Well, I talked before. I started speaking when I was 15. And I've been talking about the idea of reading a lot of books because it's how smart you are makes such a big difference. A lot of people have so much trouble. It's because they're ignorant. You know what I'm saying? There's just nothing there. You say, some people say you talk to them, they don't talk. Why? They don't have anything to talk about. They haven't been to Paris lately, they don't take bubble baths, they don't ride on carousel, they don't do any of the good stuff. Even the nuns have got it, they understand. But listen, seriously, if I got criticized, I could show you, and so could Diane, the newspapers clippings where I'd be criticized by a paper, covering a talk I was giving or something, that they really had a weirdo the other night. He's telling people to read 300 books a year, and you can tell how irrational he is to say that to anybody. Except I was serious. So I thought, well, I'll back down. I'll go to 200 books. So I did. I cut down, started saying in all my talk, should read 200 books a year. Guess what? You hear that, guess what? You know who else says that? Yeah, you do. You listen to Mike. You'll hear him say, guess what? He and I have been saying, guess what? Ever since we started dating. Guess what? Well, seriously, we learned it from Gunther Klaus, whom you heard talking about. It was his whole approach. Guess what? Neat question. And here's what happened. They still criticized me 200 books. So I fell for it again, lowered my own standard. I don't know why I did it. I lowered it to 100. You know what I'm going to say. They still criticize me. He's saying read 100 books a year. A lot of people never read 100 books in their entire lifetime. That's like reading, what, 2 books a week, right? 100 books. I thought that was so reasonable. But I got criticized even worse. You guess what? I'm back to 300. I want to tell you why. I want to tell you why that. Well, first of all, you're going to have to read Tom's book. So there's one you know for sure. You got to read Think Out of the Box if you have not read that. You've got to read My Favorite Garden by Maria Montessori, because her book, and I recommend all of her books, are all about how to be great in coaching, mentoring, tutoring, and all this whole thing. We're all interested here. That's why we're here. And every book of Maria Montessori's, just go to any bookstore, have principle after principle, concept after concept that are fantastic. By the way, I built the training program, as some of you here, and I don't mean this to be showy or anything, for Disney, and headed up all the training for many, many years. We based all of our principles on the work of Dr. Montessori. So when you go to Disney and you admire how they handle people and work with people and the way they're trained, thank Maria Montessori, because it was her philosophy that we used and that we followed. Now, if it sounds too much for you, you can secretly do 100 books, but I hope you do 300. Now, the problem is most people can't read. That they read like a child. The book is on the table. See, that is about 5-year-old reading. I want to recommend, so here's another recommendation. If you've never had a good speed reading course, take one. They are available. You can take them. There are some that can be self-taught. They're not as good as some of the others, but take a good speed reading course, because here's what you learn to do. Say this is a book and we're reading it. Here's a good speed reader. A good speed reader will not look at words. Like when I read, I've trained myself, because look, there's only 26 letters in the damn alphabet. I mean, God, you can get up to 26. There's only 26 possible combination of words. That's why it's so easy once you realize. Okay, so most people are going to read every word there. But when you get really good at speed reading, you have 3 focuses. You'll focus about there, and about there, and your eye scans all the rest. You see it just like we do in peripheral vision. I can look in the back there and I see everybody all along, and I can focus in on 1 or 2 people, but I'm seeing all of them. I see different colored shirts and so forth. That's why if you take good speed reading, you will be able to read a lot of books, and not only that, but one of the things, the content that it brings to you, you'll love, because it adds so much. I'd like to recommend another current book to all of you. It has in it some of the concepts and ideas that we're talking to you about, and it's called Straight from the Gut, the story of Jack Welch. Some of you here have read it. I understand Mike Ferry is recommending it. If you have not read it, I'd like to recommend it. And then that goes back to this major point that I was telling you about people complaining. And I'd like to recommend that instead of sanctioning incompetence, instead of getting involved on a project, always complaining about what's wrong with it, to do something about it. Just write down, do something about it. You heard a lot of action, pro-action type of things in the talks that we heard today. By the way, Those were fabulous talks, weren't they, that we heard this morning? In reading and when you take a look, I'm trying to figure out what to call people that are always dragging their feet and are negative. And I didn't have a good name for it, so I asked one of my nuns, Sister Ramon, whom had ridden with me in the bobsled, and she runs 300 hospitals. And I said, Sister, what do you in the Catholic Church call people that cause problems or difficult? And she said, Mike, we call them pissers and moaners. I said, what, sister? She said, there are pissers and moaners. She said, I know that doesn't sound very good for a Mother Superior, but that's what they are. I liked it so much, and Di and I started talking. I said, okay, let's do it. Let's call them pissers and moaners. So that's what we do. We get working on a team with somebody, and they start, the minute they start, first wispy tendril goes by, don't wait. We say, wait just a minute. We know you're a pisser and a moaner. We can tell, everybody knows. Now, they won't like it, don't misunderstand it. And you say, we wish you wouldn't, so that we can get this project going, because we really want to do something, and it'd help us a lot. Guess what? They will not pay any attention to you. So that's not quite good enough. You got to do something better. And we couldn't figure out what could we do to get them stopped. So I have never been, like I'm wearing a flag here. I've never been a person to wear pins and stuff. Some people love pins all over their hats, like some people like tattoos and stuff. But I've never been a pin person. But then they talked me into making this pin. Here it is. You can't see much of it. It's not a nothing pin. It's just got a P and M on it. Stop pissing and moaning. That's what this pin is for. So here's what we recommend, and it's so simple. We just hand it to the person and say, would you mind wearing this pin so we all know who you are? Well, I got something funny to tell you. They like these pins. The pisser and moaner likes these pins. I bet there's some pissers and moaners in this room. I bet you're here. By the way, if you don't know if you are a pisser or moaner, ask some people. They will tell you. I did not, and we can get you some of these pins if you'd like. What we like to do is put them on a project table. We're working on a project in a basket, and when somebody starts pissing and moaning, they just hand them a pin, and everybody gets it. And believe you me, it helps. You know why? I don't know if people love these pins. It's something, you make something constructive out of it rather than something negative out of it. And then they even got Di and I to write a book. I didn't want to write a book called Pissing and Moaning. What was the name of your father's book? Pissing and Moaning. Tom says we should just call it Stop P&Ming. Well, here's the book. Why I want you to get this little book and read it is that in it is a questionnaire, 100 questions, about how bad a pisser and moaner are you. In other words, is it too late? It's all over anyway. Do you have hope? And in here are tips and suggestions of what do you do with pissers and moaners. How do you handle them? Because that's more than anything else what we need to get stopped. Do you know that more things are killed and hurt and destroyed by pissing and moaning than anything else? Some people, when they get up in the morning, that's all they hear, somebody pissing and moaning the minute they get out of bed. And they're doing it on television. They go to breakfast, somebody's pissing and moaning. They go to work. When they go home, somebody's pissing and moaning all day long. Drip, 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 you know? It's terrible. So, I want to tell you why I think it's so bad is it doesn't solve the problem again. People piss and moan and think that will do something about it, and they feel better because they did it, but it did not. It didn't solve the problem. It probably makes it worse because we didn't deal with it. Pissing and moaning leads to the other greatest thing, gossip and people with too big of mouths. You want to do better right away? Keep your mouth shut. I know that sounds terrible, but I'm dead serious. Try it. Because most people talk all the time. Nobody can get a word in about anything. You know it. And if you just a little bit work on this, you'll be surprised how much life improves. if you don't have to hear somebody pee and emming, and get yourself some of these pins and stick them all over everybody you can find that need those pins. Okay. I'd like, if you could use your imaginations with me a little bit. It's about 20 after. We only have about 10 minutes, and there's two things I really want to do before we stop. One, I want to show you what we call the 4 objectives of creative thought. In other words, when you start any creative thought process, what are 4 things you want to do? Here's what the 4 are. Number 1, you want to develop what we refer to as the unique factor. The unique factor. In mentoring program, one of the things you work a lot on is the discovery of, the improvement of the unique factor. Like when we worked at Norman Brinker, we worked on Chili's and Bennigan's and Steak and Ale and Macaroni's Grill and Cozumel, all those restaurants. Norman and the teams came up with an idea that everybody thought was so stupid, and we put it in the first restaurant, and it went over like gangbusters. It was called the fajita. And we first ate the fajita, Diane and me, in a mock-up creative center called the Salad Bowl at Norman Brinker's company, and developed the concept. Also, the salad bar, as you know, in Steak and Ale, was the first salad bar, also introduced by the entrepreneurial thinker Norman Brinker. And when you read his book, On the Brink, it tells about that. By the way, I can't stress enough to you, read the book On the Brink. By the way, down the side margin of the cover of the book are the logos of all the things Norman has ever done. Jack in the Box, Steak and Ale, Chili's, etc. They're all around the margin of the cover. It's all mentoring stories. That's what it's all about, and how we develop these special little unique factors. So number 1 is the development of the unique factor. That to get what it is they've got, they've got to go to you to get it. And you keep, number 2, plusing your unique factor. Number 1 is the unique factor, and number 2 is you keep plusing the unique factor. Why? Because if you don't plus the unique factor, people steal it. One of the ways you know you got something is when people steal it. If people aren't stealing things from you, it means you haven't got anything. Because the minute you've got something, you'll have a couple lawsuits. You don't have a couple lawsuits because you have got nothing that nobody wants. You get it? And that is why you want to do unique factors, constantly working on it, and the concept of plusing something until you get it better than it was when you started, and by the time the people copy you, you changed it because you plussed it. And there are some companies that are noted for doing that, and nobody can ever catch them. The third concept is to do whatever you do so well, other people want to bring other people over to show them how well you've done it. They're proud of it for you. Look at how many people you take to Disneyland. I want to take you to Disneyland. I know people that go to Chili's. I want to show you Chili's because we put the music out in the parking lot in the front of a Chili's restaurant. Next time you go there, we took the music and put it out in the parking lot for people to hear when they open the door. They hear the music and they smell the food being wafted from the kitchen out into the parking lot. And it became a unique factor that other people wanted to show other people how well you do it. So if you got all 4 of them, develop the unique factor, do what you do so well, other people want to show other people how well that you do it, romance it, raise it to a new level of excellence, and then the last one, the concept of plussing it to a higher and higher level. The next major point, how many have we got now? It's not important, but about 10 of them, are there? 10 or 11. The next major point is find out what other people want and give it to them. I want you to think about that a little bit. Find out what other people want and give it to them. You know what most people do? They find out what people want and then make sure to take it away from them. A lot of women do that. Well, a lot of guys do it too. They find out what a woman's like and never give it to them. Is that sad? So you find out what somebody else wants and then always give it to them or help them to get it. I have to tell you, Dr. Gunther Klaus, who was a mentor also to Mike Ferry, and one of my closest friends. He and I were speaking together somewhere, and we were on one of the early 747 airplanes, flying somewhere, I don't know, and the flight attendants came down and asked Dr. Klaus, we were up in first class together, there were, I think, 6 passengers and 5 flight attendants, tremendous odds. And she said to Dr. Klaus, she said, you know, would you like a copy of Time magazine? I cannot emulate this German's accent. He's like a speeded up Henry Kissinger. Well, you know, Henry Kissinger sounds like somebody's got a foot on his turntable. But you know what I'm saying? But listen, she said, would you like to read Time magazine? Gunther, in this thick German accent, says, screamed at her, I don't read Time magazine on the ground. Why would I read it in the air? I wish you could have seen the look on this flight attendant was so pissed off. She knew there was something in the book about this. She takes off down the aisle. About 2 minutes later, up comes the in-flight service representative. You know, some kind of a management trainee or something. He comes up and made the mistake of saying to Gunther, Dr. Klaus, I understand that you fellas are having a problem. Gunther looks at me and said, are you having a problem? I know, I'm not having a problem. Gunther said, no, we're not having a problem. Oh, okay, and the guy leaves. About another 5 minutes, the flight attendant comes back down again, and she's got a stack of magazines. She must have had 20 magazines, and she's getting ready to offer some magazine. Gunther looks at me and says, let's create a problem. We thought that would be the greatest thing on that flight, so she says, Dr. Klaus, would you like a magazine? He said, oh, that's nice of you. I hope I hadn't made you mad or anything. Yes, we would. We would like a copy of Playboy if you could. My God, you should have seen the look on her face. She went down that aisle, and up comes the in-flight service representative. He flew up that aisle so fast, I am, you know, just crying and bent over. And he says, you're bothering our flight attendant. Well, Gunther Klaus, I thought he was very good for himself. He said, I'm awful sorry, I certainly wouldn't meant to bother your flight attendant. What happened? He said, you know, we don't have Playboy. Why would you ask her, you know, such? Well, he said, I'm an internationally world-known marketing expert. And he said, you're having trouble right now marketing the 747. It was right, you know, in the beginning. And he said, I know that you're looking for things to improve service, and a couple of tired businessmen up in first class, you don't say, do you want to read, you know, a Time magazine and don't have a Playboy. It's just not good marketing. And the guy says, well, Dr. Klaus, that's funny. You should bring that up because we did have Playboy on the first few flights. Gunther said, that's great. He said, what happened? He said, we had to take them off. And Gunther said, well, why did you do that? Why did you have to take them? People stole them. Now, you all know what he said. He said, that means it's the right magazine. You don't take it off, you put more on. He never could figure it out. He took off right away. You could tell it was a management training. You know what I'm saying? Well, no, they give up immediately, you know? But it's so underscored to me for the rest of my life that you should create a problem if there isn't one, but more important is to really find out what people want and try as best as you can possibly is to give it to them if you have a chance. Well, you all know the only thing that I do, I think that I don't like to do, you know what it is? I hate to stop. You know, I hate to stop most anything. I'm not going to go into detail of that. But I do. I always hate to stop. You meet people and you see people, and you do too, don't you? interact a lot, and some of you I'll never get to see again. There's some of you I'd like to see longer. And mostly because there is no end to the discussion that you and me are having right now. That's what's so beautiful about it. It just goes on and on forever. John Vance was mentor to Stephen Jobs. On the day I told you that Apple went public, John was 5 years old. Steve was 19, I think, years old. So we went fishing at the Pine Lake Trout Club, our rendezvous point. And it was something to watch this little boy teaching this young entrepreneur, starting one of the most successful startups in the history of American business, teach and learn from this little boy how to fly fish. And I want to describe, it was the most interesting thing. We had a big willow tree, we had a lot of trout. And the trout loved to get up underneath the willow tree, the hardest place to get at them, with a fly rod, and all the, the water would move underneath that tree. And John kept seeing the water boiling underneath that willow tree, and he said to Steve Jobs, he said, "Steve, did you know the fish are under the tree?" And he said, "We're going to have to figure out how to get under the tree." And you could just see Steve Jobs wouldn't interfere. He wanted to watch what was this 5-year-old going to do. And he looked at it for a minute, and then he looked at it for about another 5 minutes, and he walked over to the edge of a tree. And many of you here probably know what I'm going to say. Steve Jobs was hypnotized. He didn't move a muscle. And John got a leaf about this big. Now, some of you know the rest of the story. And he said, "Steve, watch what I'm going to do." And he stood on a little dam down by the water, and he put the leaf in the water and held it with one hand, and he took the fly on his little fly rod and set it on the leaf. Took the rod up in his hand and let the leaf go and thread the line out. And the current carried the leaf and the fly over underneath the willows where you could never get with a fly rod or anything else. And he put his finger down and stopped the fly from moving. The leaf sunk, and a huge 7-pound brown trout came up and almost tore the rod out of John's hand. It was just awesome to watch. If you could have seen the look on Steve Jobs' face, recognizing what it was that he loved to do so much, create a thing like an Apple computer to revolutionize the way people were watching this little boy show his entrepreneurial thinking and creativity just in that simple leaf trick. What I'm about to tell you is a true story. Diane and I are finishing the fifth in her mentoring series of books. It's called Dare to Be Wise, is our working title. And by the way, if you want any of our stuff, products, and a description of that mentor program, she'll have them back there. And you can also call our website. In our book, we have a story, and that I would like to, at this time, as I close, tell you I've enjoyed being with you, but I would like to dedicate this story to my old friend Mike and to his sons, and especially to my new protege, this story and what it means and can, I think, mean to us. A boy, like the John that I described to you, he was a little older, 7 years old, went up to what he learned was one of the smartest men that had ever lived, and said that he wanted to be a smart man or a wise man like he was. And that's where we got the title of our book, Dare to Be Wise. And he said, "I'd like to be a wise man like you. How could I do it?" And the man looked at him and he said, "Little boy, I'm not sure I'm the wisest man in the world, but I'll tell you 4 things. If you do them, you'll be wise when you grow up." And he put his hand on the little boy's shoulder. He said, "The first word, little boy, is to think about your values and your principles. Think about the values and the principles you're going to live by as a boy and as a man." Then he said, "The second word, little boy, is to believe in yourself based on the thinking you've done about your values and your principles. But believe in yourself based on your values are the things you consider to be important. He said the third word, little boy, is to believe. Believe in yourself based on the thinking that you've done about your values and your principles. And he said the last word, little boy, is to dare. To dare to make the things that you are dreaming about because you believe in yourself. He looked at the little boy and he said, let me tell these words again. Walt Disney said to a little boy from Terre Haute, Indiana, by Sleeping Beauty's wishing well, some of you know where it is, in front of the castle. In case you forget those words, little boy, they are think, believe, dream, and dare. We need more great people. You're involved with an organization here that is dedicated to making more great people. We're running short of great people, as Edison said off the top of the Matterhorn in Morse code. Create something for us. We need more great people. It might as well be you. You should be a great person. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Are you going to talk? Are you going to talk? We're going to do great. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Hey, Michael. Happy day. You got it.
Okay. Michael, you did it again. Just like the first time I saw you 30-some years ago. And I just said to Sasha, he is better than ever. And we appreciate it a lot. Thank you. The best.